He's a former two-term Texas state representative, former Texas Freedom Caucus chairman, and a retired Fort Worth PD officer, continuing his crusade to defend and protect the Constitution for we the people. Your host, Mike Lang.
We've got somebody in the studio today, so I'll be doing a show like we used to do, kind of tag team and talking about the issues. Nate, where you been?
Well, Mike, I've been a little busy, believe it or not.
What have you been doing? I mean, I haven't seen you much. Well, I've seen you at some forums, and I've seen your signs all around town. So kind of explain to me how it's going and why you got involved and how everything's going.
Campaign's been going great, Mike. We got a lot of signs out. We're raising a pretty good amount of money, more so than my opponent. We are working very hard to achieve victory in the Republican primary this March.
Well, I know you've been hitting the ground running. I hear you're knocking a lot of doors, and that's what it takes to get out there and, go fight and try to win, especially against an incumbent. Now, we've had some shows on the incumbent, Jack Wilson, and the things that he has not done. And during the forum, you guys had a moment there where you spoke about what you plan to do, and he spoke about what he has done. Mm-hmm. So what do you plan to do when you get in as commissioner?
Well, first and foremost, we have to take care of our infrastructure. Having grown up here, I can tell everybody watching, and I'm sure most would agree, that Hood County has been overdeveloped, lacking the infrastructure in place. That's due to a lot of short-sighted decisions that go back not only just the last 4 years, but many years prior to that. Infrastructure, when talking to the voters, is the number one issue. But my vision is to have Hood County become the gold standard for Republican counties across the state.
I agree that Hood County can be the gold standard, not just for infrastructure, but a lot of issues moving forward. Where we sit, right outside the Metroplex. We've got access to the DFW news market, and we've got good grants coming in. We've got new growth, so there's a lot of new money coming in. So I think it would take somebody with some, gumption to get in there and start working with maybe some of the other, one or two commissioners that we have and maybe city council to get Granbury on the map to push it towards that gold standard. So what do you have in mind to do that?
To have us become the gold standard, we first have to get out from behind the 8-ball on infrastructure. We have to get ready for the 377 expansion, and that means taking care of these side roads and feeder roads, specifically in Precinct 3, which I'm running to represent, as well as making decisions for the rest of the county. But in Precinct 3, we have Old Acton Highway, Plaza Drive, Ray Road, Davis Road, Bob White, Northgate, a lot of these side roads and feeder roads that are not ready for the increase in traffic that will happen during that 377 expansion. And just keep in mind that when we're down to one lane each way there on 377, people will be looking for alternate routes. I already avoid 377 like the plague, and a lot of voters that I've been talking to do also. But roads like Old Acton Highway, specifically the county portion, we don't even have paint on the ground for the lane stripes, letting people know what lane they're in. There's some little, kind of worn out reflectors on the ground, but those roads are going to see triple the traffic that they have right now. The roads are not prepared for that, and the intersections are not safe enough to handle that. This expansion of 377 is already going to be a headache. We don't have to make it a migraine. But it's going to take somebody willing to take action. I have a plan to do that, and, the incumbent has yet to lay that out.
And what's funny is, you look at some of these campaigns and how they go, and you look at the forums, and I always like to look at the first forum because that's where you see where the incumbent, rolls out, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I'm proud of. And the candidates always say, this is what I will do, and you go on and on. But what I find out is if you've got a incumbent like Jack Wilson, he'll listen to your forum and he'll listen to you talk about what should be done on infrastructure and things like that, and all of a sudden at the second and third forum that morphs into his little speech. So he tries to take the stuff from you when in fact for 3 years he hasn't done anything.
Yeah, they say imitation is the highest form of flattery, and that's exactly what we had with those candidate forums. As at the second forum, in his opening statement or one of his responses, he was taking my talking points from the first forum.
Right.
And he's saying, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It's like, buddy, you've been in office 3 years and you ain't done jack.
Well, you know what? That's good, but you know what? Maybe he likes what you're talking about. And maybe he thinks that's a good idea. And, has he ever sat down and talked to you about anything?
No, I asked him for a meeting just last year before I even decided to run. I said, I see this coming. The mayor has talked about it, but it takes the city and the county working together.
Right.
And so I asked him, I said, hey, I've got some ideas for, where we need to make certain intersections safer. We're going to see more traffic. And it doesn't take a civil engineer to know that when 377's down to one lane each way, people will be pushed, that traffic will get pushed to Old Acton Highway and some of these other roads, right? It doesn't take a mental giant to see that. But when I asked him to take that meeting, he's like, well, just send it in an email and blah, blah, blah. And the next time I saw him, which was maybe a couple days later, he goes, oh, I never got that email from you. You must not have anything to say. And it's like, between the way that he has treated me, the way he has treated a lot of constituents that I've met out knocking doors, I said, he just might have an opponent this November. Did a lot of praying, did a lot of seeking wise counsel, and I decided to go all in on this commissioner's race. I've put everything else on hold. This is what I'm running to do. I actually want this job, and I keep saying it, and I will keep saying it. There's a stark contrast between us.
I think of all the races this election cycle, this is probably the biggest race that has the biggest difference between a challenger and an incumbent. So let's switch gears for a minute and let's go. And I know the border issue is one of the biggest issues, whether you're Democrat, Republican, wherever it is in the United States. What state you're in, it doesn't matter. It's become a huge issue, and some people say, oh, that's, a national issue. We don't have to worry about, border control or illegal aliens or whatever.
That's not exactly right, is it?
No, and it's not, because on the county level, we're faced with the county jail, we're faced with county hospitals, we're faced with the schools, the ISDs. So, a while back, we talked about the border issues and what your opponent did or did not do. Can you kind of fill us up, put us up to date on that?
Yeah, sure. So in the Republican Party of Texas platform, there is a platform plank that says the governor should declare an invasion because under the Constitution that allows him to do certain things with the National Guard troops and all this stuff. And Commissioner Eagle over in Precinct 4 put it on the agenda for a vote. My opponent voted against it and said, we have other bigger issues, in my opinion, than this. And it was like being in the twilight zone when I heard him say that watching Commissioner's Court. I've been watching Commissioner's Court and participating in these meetings for about the last 5 or 6 years now. But when I heard him say that, I said, man, that guy just doesn't sound like a Republican.
It kind of took me back during that time frame because, here we are just a few months, from there, and we've got over 300,000 plus people coming across the border that are illegal, and they'll never end up probably going back. And, we've got to do on a national level just so many different things. But when it comes to the local level, I would think that the citizens want a commissioner that's going to at least be able to stand up and take control of the issues on a local level. Let's say the jail, schools, you can be very effective as a commissioner in the schools.
The Second Amendment.
Second Amendment.
You go back to when Beto O'Rourke said, hell yes, we're coming for your AR-15s. I saw that. I was alarmed. And I took it to the sheriff, who was a client of mine at that time. He's not anymore. But I said, hey, we need to do this Second Amendment sanctuary resolution thing. Because what happens at the federal level does trickle down to the local level. Here locally, in our jail just last week, it was stated by the sheriff that we have about 20 or so, sometimes more, illegals coming and staying in our jail that we are paying for. With the recent actions by Governor Abbott, we need a conservative leader in Precinct 3 that's willing to reach out and say, hey, I love what you're doing on the border. I've been behind this from the beginning. How can we help? And can we start sending some of these illegals that we pick up who are already here committing crimes, right, on top of the coming across the border illegally? Now they're in Hood County committing crimes. What do we have to do to get these people deported?
And that's good, because I hear some people talk about Jack saying, hey, I've got all these contacts down in Austin, and I know the governor, and, you know, I'm in the dark world. Whatever he said about the dark world in the
deep state or something,
I don't
career,
know,
yeah.
Dark world. It was way out in left field. But anyway, you know, here he is, and he can support anybody he wants. You know, as a commissioner, Jack, anybody can support whoever they want. But if you're touting the support of Governor Abbott, and then you go out there and you support Lieutenant Colonel Allen West for governor, and you don't support Governor Abbott, and then you turn around and you support somebody like Glenn Rogers, who Governor Abbott is totally against and has supported his opponent, Mike Alcott, and, you know, same with Sid Miller, same with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, same with Paxton,
Attorney General Ken Paxton.
So, you know, I think Jack Wilson's on the other side of what's going on down in Austin. So I don't know how effective he's going to be.
Well, not just in Austin. He's out of touch even here locally. I mean, to have a sitting Hood County commissioner refuse to sign on to a resolution declaring or asking the governor to declare an invasion at the southern border, I think is a travesty. You know, the COVID lockdowns, people were scared at the time. I get it. But Jack Wilson put out a public policy statement in the Hood County News stating that he supported the lockdowns. In times of crisis, you need conservatives that you can count on to stick by the Constitution and the Republican Party of Texas platform. And right now, and I know this is tough for some of the people that are going to watch this to hear, you don't have it in Precinct 3. He's proven time and time again that when it comes to major policy issues that do affect us, even though they may be state or federal, they do affect us. He has proven time and again he cannot be trusted to make the right decision.
As we go through the campaign season and the candidates get out there, especially the candidates that are running against incumbents that actually have a record, a voting record, a public record of what's going on, people start complaining and whining and you know, they get their feelings hurt because you're talking about an incumbent that you're running against and you're talking about issues that's been voted on or he's publicly stated and made comments on. So how do you manage with the, oh, they're just going after my character, as opposed to, no, you're supposed to be accountable for what you vote, you know, how you vote.
Unlike other people on the ballot, I don't have to stoop down to the level of desperation of making up lies about my opponent, of making personal character attacks against my opponent. I don't have to do any of that. Voters appreciate the truth. This is about accountability. This is about holding your elected officials accountable for their votes and public policy stances. We have enough rhinos in Washington, D.C. We have enough rhinos in Austin. We don't need any more rhinos here. And the fact of the matter is, Jack Wilson is unreliable when it comes down to conservative Republican principles.
We have about 3 weeks or so left before voting day. Nate, what would you add, if you could add anything else that you'd want to tell the voters?
Anybody can say they are conservative. I have a clear, verifiable record of taking conservative policy positions at every turn. Voters have a very important decision to make on March 5th, with early voting starting February 20th. Got to throw that in, right?
Right.
They have a very important decision to make because there is such a stark contrast in the public policy positions. I have a vision for Hood County in which we become the gold standard for Republican counties across Texas through unapologetic conservative leadership, of which I have a track record of doing. I believe we need safe roads. I believe we need to prepare and get out from behind the eight ball as far as our infrastructure goes. I believe we need properly funded and equipped volunteer fire departments. I think our sheriff's office needs to be run efficiently. I think that we all agree on quite a bit. And when it comes down to the issues, which I believe is how people should vote on the issues, right? It's easy to get into the cult of personality. But me personally, I want someone I can count on to uphold my conservative values. My name is Nate Criswell. I'm running for County Commissioner, Precinct 3, and I would very much appreciate your prayers, your support, and your vote.
Thank you, Nate, for coming by. I appreciate you. Thanks for sitting in again. It's good to have you on the show, and hopefully you'll be back and we'll be able to talk about other issues. Thanks again.
Thanks.